Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a full-length video taking you through exactly how to assemble your own reborn baby. So this is once you have painted, and if you're rooting the hair, rooted it, and you've glued the hair in from the inside, and now you are completely ready to put it all together. As I said, this will be a full-length video, so I will take you through my entire process, explaining why I do each step that I do and how I do it, of course. So sit back, and if you want to, do this alongside me. For this process, you're going to need quite a lot of different materials. You're going to need something to weight the body and the limbs with. So I use glass beads for my limbs and steel discs for the body and the head. You will also need a pair of tights, obviously the body that you're using, and a good amount of stuffing. It will take a surprising amount of stuffing. So what I'm going to do is scoop up my glass beads. You can use finer glass beads than this. I quite like these ones, but the fine glass ones that look like sand work just as well. And it might depend on the size of your reborn as to which you prefer to use, and also the cost of the material, of course, as well. So I am filling this up. And I like my babies to be quite heavy, so I do tend to fill them to around 3/4 full of the limbs, and just want to shake to make sure that it's got all the way down into the limbs. And you can see by shaking that this level has gone down slightly, so I will add a little bit more. As I say, I like a heavy baby. If I've added a little too much, I'll just remove a bit. But that's my personal preference, because I like them to feel as real as possible. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my stuffing. I have a couple of different types of stuffing that I use. This one that I'm going to be using for the limbs is actually stuffing that's out of an old pillow. So it's not quite as nice as the stuffing that I use for the body, but it absolutely does the job in making sure that none of those beads are going to escape. And what you can do is also buy plugs that go on top of these. That's an extra, it's not absolutely necessary. Some people will cover this in like a felt or cardboard or something. I haven't had an issue with any beads leaking out when I have really shoved that stuffing in there. So that is one limb done. And I will do the same with the rest of my limbs. What you can also do is use a weighing scale if you want to make sure that your limbs weigh the same. So for example, the legs weigh the same. I have found that over time you kind of get used to how it works and how they feel, and don't need to do that as much. So again, I'm just slightly playing with this to make sure it's good. These feel about the same weight. It's about the same space in there. Just add a drop or two more, and then going in and adding the stuffing on top. I do like to make sure it's really secure in there, so sometimes I'll even go in with like the end of a paintbrush and just kind of shove it down, almost like when you needle felt. So that's secure in there. And then we've got the arms, which of course are smaller, so they will take less filling. Ooh. Try not to spill everywhere, because these are an absolute pain when you spill these, trust me. You have to get the Hoover out. So again, you want to shake as you go just to make sure it's getting all the way down into all those fingers. And I have found that this works really well. Sometimes you will get dolls that have a really, really small opening here, and then it's helpful to have like a little funnel. So I actually have this funnel that I use sometimes when I have holes that are a bit too small. So still filling it up here. And that is about 3/4 of the way. You can see the beads are up to about here. So I'm happy with that, and then do exactly the same, add the stuffing in on top. So that keeps that super secure. And then you can see, you know, this, you can no longer really squish this. You shouldn't be squishing the vinyl much anyway. So last limb is this one. And I'm just repeating the process. This is quite quick once you've done it a few times. You watch those beads go down. Added in slightly too many, so take a few out. Add a few back in, just till you're happy with the amount that's in there. And stuffing again. So happy with that. The next thing I'm going to be doing is creating the weighting pouches for both the head and the body. And so I use pairs of tights for this. Sometimes I might use a sock in the body, but I've bought a bunch of tights from Primark, so I'm going to be using those. I find that it's useful to think about this in terms of thirds. So I would like 1/3 of the leg for the head section, and then around 2/3 of the leg for the body section. So I can usually get 2 to 3 dolls out of each pair of tights. And with the longer section that you're going to use for the body, I just make sure that I've knotted it at one end, so nothing's going to come out of there. And this one obviously already has that part of the bottom of it sealed. So I've got 2 different sizes of these, and I will be starting off on 0. And let's start with the smaller one, which is the head. So one of the reasons I don't recommend using the glass beads for this is because the glass beads can often go through the tights, particularly if you're using tights that aren't a very high denier. So that's why I go for the recycled steel. Another reason why I like the steel is you don't have to use a huge amount of it. Because it's so heavy, it doesn't take up a lot of space in your doll. So I'm going to add around about a pound of weight into the head, and that's just because I like a really heavy floppy head. So that's that weighting pouch done. So I will tie that off, and then you can double this back on itself and even triple it back on itself, which just helps make it more secure. Next, we're going to be going and creating the weighting pouch for the body, which will be larger. And I tend to do around double the weight. So probably about 2 to 2.5 pounds. Again, I like my babies to be heavy. I'm going to 0 this off and start spooning this into here. So this now weighs just over 2 pounds. And I'm doing exactly the same process as with the previous. So tying that off and then going back on itself. And this just helps make it into a more secure pouch. So there is my body weighting pouch. Now we're going to be getting into the fun bit, which is the assembly, and I always start with an unstuffed body and adding on my limbs. So most bodies, the zip ties will come already threaded through, which is really helpful because it can be quite tricky to thread them through. Make sure that you've got the body the right way around. So often the butt is slightly ruched and you've got the legs coming out the front. Some kits will come with bodies. This one came with it. It's by Cassie Love. So this is the Leo sculpt by Cassie Love, and it came with the body already. So that was really helpful. I don't tighten these all the way either at this point in time, just enough that they're not going to suddenly come off. And at this point I will add in some stuffing just to this bottom area. So I use a higher quality stuffing that's really soft when you squish it and quite moldable. And I will add that into the very bottom. I'm also glad that my hands fitted here. If this was my fiance doing it, his hands probably wouldn't fit inside here. So small hands are helpful at this point in time. So I'm essentially adding stuffing into the back and this very bottom section because I don't like to feel the waiting pouch. So the next thing I'm going to do is add that waiting pouch in. You can see it's quite large. So once you've got it in, I like to manipulate everything around it. So it does sit kind of in that bottom area, but it's surrounded by the stuffing. And this means that when you're holding the baby, you will just feel softness rather than a big hard waiting pouch. When I got one of my dolls, I had to re-weight it, as in it was from another artist, because all of the weighting had gone into 2 balls which were in each butt cheek, and that made it feel like he had buns of steel. So during this process I'm continually checking for where that waiting pouch is sitting and making sure it's sitting exactly where I want it to, and that you can't feel it from the outside. And if there's any areas where you can, just adding more stuffing in and around. Now is about the right time to add the arms on. You can add them on earlier, that's absolutely fine as well. So same process as with the legs. Not doing them up too tightly at this point. So looks a bit ridiculous at the moment. And I will be adding in more stuffing to obviously stuff that chest up. If you have a larger doll, it can be good to do 2 pouches of weighting for the body. So have a larger one on the bottom and then a smaller one kind of sitting in this chest area. And that's absolutely fine if you want to split them. And as I said, it does take a surprising amount of stuffing. It also depends on how floppy you want your baby. So the floppier you want them, then the less stuffing you have up here at the top. I do like to have a decent amount because when someone gets these home and they start cuddling them, this stuffing naturally compresses. And so I think it's good to start off slightly more well stuffed than you would want it, just to aid that natural compression. We have reached what I call the headless chicken phase. This is where we are pretty good, and I am going to slightly tighten up all of the limbs. So the way I check to make sure this is tight enough is I basically try and pull the limb out, and if the limb's definitely not coming out but can still move freely in the socket, then it's a good tightness. So again, with this one, if you really tried, I think you could take that out, but that's not going anywhere, and it can still move. Same with that one, and same with the arms. So you can see, I think if I really pulled that, it would be able to come out. I always think worst case scenario, someone's child or granddaughter has got hold of this and they are just yanking it around by the arm. So how do I make sure it doesn't come out? but can still move freely. So that one is good. And then this one, doing it a little bit tighter, but that's not going anywhere. The next part I'm going to be weighting is the head. So I take the little weighting pouch that I made earlier and slip it into the head. Make sure that your glue on the inside is absolutely dry before you do this. And for smaller babies like this one, which is more newborn, I like to have the weighting pouch completely at the back of the head. If it's a toddler size, then I would either not weight the head at all or put the weighting more kind of at the bottom bit here. So now I'm going in with my stuffing, and the head takes a shocking amount of stuffing, but you want to make sure that that weighting pouch absolutely stays in place. So I do like to well stuff the head. So always get more stuffing than you think you need, because it takes a lot. And this head is feeling quite heavy now as I'm holding it. And I know it's pretty good when like the head will no longer stand upright, because it just falls over naturally. So that's a nice floppy head. And now the fun part is adding the head on top. So the way I like to do this is by popping the head on and not really tightening this much, but holding it there to make sure I'm happy with the amount of stuffing that's in this part. And if it's like very floppy like this, I think I'll add some more stuffing in here, because I don't like it to be super floppy, because mine are quite floppy due to the weight of the head anyway, so this can be quite well stuffed. So trying that head on again, adding it in, tightening it a bit, and having a bit of a feel around there as to whether I'm happy with how floppy he is. If anything, I now might be a little overstuffed. So what I will do is take the head off. I may need to open up this a little bit, reopen the cable tie, and that's quite easy to do just with a pair of tweezers, and slot it in between the parts of the cable tie. So slot it where these teeth go and push this back, and then you can loosen the cable tie. And I'm going to take out just a little of that stuffing. Try the head again. And I think I am happier with how it's feeling now. Once I am happy, I will tighten the neck. Yeah, so I think I'm happy with that level of flop. Tighten the neck same way as I do the limbs, so I still want it to be able to turn side to side, but I also don't want it to pop off. So if I really pulled that, it definitely could pop off. So I tighten it a tiny bit, check that I can still turn it, and then I think that is secure. And now I go in with my nail nippers, and I just take off each of these tails. What you can do instead, if you would like, is tuck them in. I just prefer to cut them. I think it's easier for me to cut them off, but you can tuck them in as well. So once that is done for all of them, then you have your assembled baby. Hopefully you can see him in there. I hope you found this video helpful and that you feel confident in being able to make your own reborn now. You can also use a lot of this method if you are just re-weighting your own reborn. So Do let me know if you have a go at that and how you get on. And I will hopefully see you next time.